Imagine a world where every app you tap, every website you swipe through, every digital interaction just works.
Yeah.
It's intuitive, it's fast, and it's exactly what you needed. Maybe sometimes even before you knew you needed it.
That's the dream, right?
Exactly. Now, imagine the opposite. Frustration, confusion, a system that feels like it was designed by aliens.
We've all been there.
And
Definitely.
what separates those two experiences? Well, it's not magic. It's the meticulous, often kind of invisible process of determining system requirements.
That's the core of it.
The digital world doesn't run on magic, it runs on systems.
Yeah.
And learning to design them starts right here with understanding what users truly need.
And that's precisely why this deep dive is so vital, especially for you, our future leaders in business and technology.
Absolutely.
Whether you're navigating the complexities of your BCIS 3389 course at Tarleton State University's Dr. Sampak College of Business, or maybe you're simply eager to master the craft of building truly effective systems in, well, any industry. Before we unpack these essential insights, maybe take a moment to like this deep dive, subscribe to our channel, share it with someone you know who's building their future.
Good idea.
By doing so, you won't miss out on insider tips that could, help position you for a really bright career. And you'll also find additional resources in the description that we've curated just for you.
Perfect. Okay, so today we're unraveling the critical phase of determining system requirements. We're drawing some really profound insights from the latest 10th edition of Modern Systems Analysis and Design by Valacich and George.
Great book.
It really is. And this isn't just theory, folks. It's the foundational knowledge for anyone shaping digital systems. In the realm of systems analysis and design, we're talking about this systematic approach, right? Analyzing, designing, implementing software systems with a heavy focus on those crucial first 4 stages of the system development lifecycle.
Exactly. We dive into both traditional and cutting-edge methodologies, including those powerful computer-aided analysis and design tools, case tools, that are really transforming the field.
Yeah, they make a huge difference.
They do. And all of this is explored through project-oriented cases, blending that academic theory with practical, real-world application. At its heart, understanding requirements is where everything truly begins.
So what will you gain from this journey with us? I mean, beyond just being well-informed, which is great in itself.
Sure.
This deep dive will directly support your learning, whether you're in MIS, CIS, IT, or even broader business studies.
Yeah.
For instance, you'll learn to apply fundamental economic, organizational, and systems concepts.
Okay. Let's break that down.
Yeah, so that's like understanding how technology impacts a company's bottom line, its structure, how different parts interact. That's your KO1, KO2, KO3 right there.
Got it. The why behind the tech.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you'll also be prepared to utilize standard UML diagrams at various levels, from the user interface, like use case diagrams, to business processes with activity diagrams, and even at the database level with class diagrams. That's hitting your KO4.
Super important for visualization.
Totally. And we'll even touch upon how project management methodologies, your KO5, are inherently tied to getting these requirements right in the first place.
And it's not just about theoretical knowledge, is it?
Not at all.
On the practical side, this material really lays the groundwork for you to actually implement those use case, activity, and class diagrams from real business scenarios. That's SO1, SO2, and SO3. Tangible skills.
Tangible skills you can put on a resume. Absolutely. And critically, you'll enhance your ability to clearly demonstrate and communicate these concepts in written formats.
Ah, the WO1, communication.
Yes. Showcasing your skill in choosing the right analysis tools, applying them to cases, and effectively communicating your findings to stakeholders. Like, why did you choose this diagram? What does it mean for the business?
So it's not just knowing, it's about doing, explaining, and really showing why it all matters.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, so if that's the big picture, where do we actually begin the journey of building a system? It all comes down to truly understanding what it needs to do, doesn't it?
It really does.
Before you can even think about, laying down code or picking a platform, you need to know what problem you're solving and for whom. This is the requirements determination phase, figuring out how the current system works, maybe what its problems are, and more importantly, what users actually want in a new one.
Absolutely. And you hit on the crucial point.
Yeah.
It's far more than just asking for a wish list. What do you want? That's only the start.
Right.
It's about digging deep to understand the core problem, the user's true needs, and often, what they don't even realize they need. Or maybe they know they need something, but they don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
It does. So this raises a huge question for any project leader, any analyst.
Mm.
How do we cut through all the noise and chaos of a busy business environment to get to that true, profound understanding?
That's the million-dollar question. Okay, let's start with the time-tested techniques, the classics, right? The ones that have been the bedrock of systems analysis for decades.
The traditional methods.
Yeah, they might seem straightforward, but mastering them is definitely an art form.
Oh, for sure. And interviews are absolutely paramount. They allow us to speak directly with users individually or maybe in groups to really understand their perspectives on both the current system and what they envision for the future.
Just talking to people sounds simple.
It sounds simple, but this isn't just casual chat, you know? It requires careful preparation. We need to define the scope clearly, identify diverse and representative stakeholders.
Diverse is key there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Covering all user profiles, not just the loudest voices or the managers, but the people actually using the system day to day. And then you have to craft precise questions.
Okay.
And the real art is in balancing the types of questions you ask. We use open-ended questions to draw out that rich contextual information. Things where interviewees aren't constrained by, like, yes-no answers.
Give me an example.
Okay, like, what's the best feature about your current word processor and why? Or, to really get them thinking outside the box, if you had a magic wand, what's the one thing you'd change about your daily workflow?
Okay. Get some talking.
Exactly. These questions encourage detailed narrative responses that often reveal those hidden needs we talked about. But then on the other hand, you need closed-ended questions.
Right, some more specific ones.
Yeah, they offer specific choices. They're really useful for gathering quantitative data or focusing on a narrow area. Think ranking features, ease of use, speed, compatibility, or using a Likert scale for agreement. The next version should enable hypertext markup language documents. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. You get measurable data.
So it's about the nuance, right? Not just asking questions, but asking the right questions, the right type of question, and then knowing how to follow up.
Precisely. The follow-up question is often where the gold is found. It allows you to either drill down for more detail, someone's being maybe a bit too general, or pull back for broader context if they're getting lost in the weeds, you know, too focused on one tiny detail. It's kind of like being a detective, gently guiding the conversation.
I like that analogy. Okay, what about talking to multiple people at once? Group interviews?
Right. Group interviews, they have clear advantages. You can build consensus in real time, which is great. And you often see a synergy where one person's idea sparks another's, leading to more comprehensive insights than you might get one-on-one.
Sounds efficient.
It can be. But the challenges are equally real. I mean, scheduling multiple busy people, that can be a nightmare.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And ensuring everyone participates equally requires a really skilled facilitator. You have to manage potential conflicts that might derail the session, and simply keeping the discussion on track demands discipline.
So how do you manage that?
Well, there are strategies. Using time-stamped agendas helps. Assigning specific questions to individuals beforehand can ensure everyone gets a chance to speak. Sometimes breaking larger groups into parallel sessions to tackle different aspects works well. And, you know, in our modern world, leveraging collaborative technologies like Google Docs or Miro boards can help capture diverse input simultaneously and mitigate some of those scheduling or participation challenges you see in person.
Right, using tech to help the process. So interviews give us that deep qualitative insight. But what if you need to cast a wider net? Get a pulse check from hundreds, maybe even thousands of users. Interviews aren't practical then.
No way.
That's where you start thinking about something like a questionnaire or survey. Right?
Exactly. Questionnaires are your mass data collection tool. They're incredibly efficient, especially in the initial phases when you need a broad understanding of requirements from many stakeholders.
Reach a lot of people quickly.
Yeah, they can reach huge audiences. And if they're designed thoughtfully, with probing questions, maybe some open-ended text boxes, alongside the multiple choice they can uncover, underlying requirements that stakeholders might not even be consciously aware of.
But there's a trade-off.
There is. The challenge, of course, is that you lose that real-time interaction of an interview. You can't ask an immediate follow-up question based on their answer. So the survey design itself has to be really smart, anticipating those deeper layers of inquiry.
That makes sense. You get breadth, but you might sacrifice some depth unless your design is stellar. Okay, speaking of depth, sometimes what people say they do and what they actually do are two wildly different things. That's where user observation comes in, isn't it?
Absolutely. Directly observing users working in their natural environment, at their desks, on the factory floor, wherever, can reveal incredibly detailed, complicated procedures, things that might be difficult for them to articulate in an interview or stuff they've just internalized over years of doing it.
Like muscle memory.
Kind of, yeah. It's best when you really need to document actual work processes, not just the perceived ones. You see the shortcuts they take, the workarounds they've invented, the little frustrations, the sticky notes plastered everywhere, all the things that make or break a system in reality.
And this is super important because observation often uncovers what we call the informal system,
Ah,
the
yes.
way things actually get done, the hacks, the tribal knowledge. This is often dramatically different from the formal system, which is the official, documented way things are supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that informal system is crucial for building something that users will actually adopt and, hopefully love,
Yeah,
because it reflects reality.
exactly. But it's not without its challenges. There's a well-known observer bias, sometimes called the Hawthorne effect. People tend to behave differently when they know they're being watched,
Right. They might work harder or be more careful.
or try to hide the shortcuts they normally use. So, to minimize this, you can brief users up front, make it absolutely clear they're not being evaluated personally, and that the observations won't be tied to them individually. It's about improving the system, not judging them.
Okay, that helps.
Also, doing multiple observations over time, maybe at different times a day or during different parts of a process, helps. And always supplementing observation with other data collection methods, interviews, document analysis helps paint a more accurate, validated picture.
Good point. Triangulate the data.
Precisely. Consider the lost soft drink sales story. Imagine a manager quietly observing a sales rep really struggling with an old, clunky point-of-sale system to process a customer's drink order.
Okay.
The rep is fumbling with multiple screens, maybe the system is slow, customers are getting visibly frustrated, tapping their feet, and ultimately sales are being lost as people just give up and walk away.
Painful to watch.
Very. Now, an interview might have captured some of that rep's frustration. Maybe they'd say the system is slow. But the direct observation immediately highlights a critical, tangible system flaw, a real bottleneck causing lost revenue that an interview might entirely miss, or that the sales rep might downplay, thinking, oh, it's just part of the job.
Yeah, you see the impact directly.
That direct, visceral insight is invaluable. It brings to life what an interview might completely miss or fail to convey adequately.
That really brings it to life. It's like seeing the actual pain points rather than just hearing about them secondhand.
Yeah.
But how do you handle the ethical tightrope of observation? Especially if people know they're being watched and might change their behavior, even subconsciously.
That's a critical point. Transparency is absolutely key. We want to avoid making people feel like they're being spied on, right?
Definitely.
Clearly communicating the purpose of the observation, we're doing this to make the system better for you, to reduce your frustration, to make your job easier, goes a long way. Building that trust is essential.
Okay.
And as we just mentioned, combining it with other methods helps validate what you see. If you observe something unusual, you can follow up in an interview later. No single method should ever be used in isolation.
Makes sense. Validate, validate, validate.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly to document analysis. Businesses, well, they run on documents, don't they? Invoices, reports, standard operating procedures, customer service logs, old user manuals.
The paper trail. Or the digital trail these days.
Precisely. These are literal gold mines for understanding existing requirements and embedded business rules.
I can see that. It's like finding the instruction manual for the current process.
Yeah.
Even if it's a bit dusty or, buried on a shared drive somewhere.
Exactly. Analyzing existing documents helps us understand the current system and identify requirements that are already baked into the organization's processes.
Right.
It's incredibly effective for understanding established business rules and content requirements.
Like what specifically?
Well, for example, an invoice form clearly shows distinct fields like bill to, ship to, and maybe order from addresses. These aren't just suggestions, they're explicit data requirements dictating what information must be captured.
Got.
Or a student registration form might indicate a maximum character length for student names, or that a student ID must be exactly 9 digits, no letters allowed. These kinds of details, these constraints, are often hidden in plain sight within existing forms and reports. They dictate how data must be captured, stored, and processed.
Finds those hidden constraints.
Exactly. The challenge, however, is that documents can be incomplete, they might be outdated, Or they may only reflect the formal system, how things are supposed to work, not the informal one we just discussed, how they actually work.
Right, the official procedure versus the reality.
But here's the interesting thing. Even if they're inaccurate or outdated, they still provide valuable insights. They show how things should be done according to policy, or perhaps how they should not be done anymore. Sometimes finding an outdated manual tells you exactly what not to repeat in the new system. It highlights past decisions or rules that need reevaluation.
That's a great point. Even wrong information can be informative. Okay, so after all this individual data gathering, interviews, surveys, observation, digging through documents, what happens when you have a broad spectrum of stakeholders, maybe different departments, and their opinions are inevitably conflicting?
Ah, yes. The classic challenge.
How do you get everyone on the same page and forge a path forward? That's where I imagine workshops become pretty indispensable.
Absolutely. Workshops, sometimes called Joint Application Design or JAD sessions in the past, are designed for that very purpose. They bring multiple stakeholders together, users, managers, technical staff, maybe even customers in a structured, facilitated environment.
Okay, structured is key.
Very key. The goal is to collaboratively discuss and define requirements. They actively encourage participation from all sides, which helps generate more comprehensive requirements by getting diverse perspectives in the room at the same time, interacting.
So you head off conflicts early.
That's a major benefit. They're excellent for resolving conflicts in real time because people have to hash out their differences face to face, guided by the facilitator. They help gain consensus on key decisions and validate requirements collectively.
Take that buy-in.
Exactly. This ensures the system truly meets the needs of all users and stakeholders, not just the loudest or most influential voices. It's about building collective understanding and shared ownership of the solution. Everyone feels heard and hopefully contributes to the final requirements.
That makes so much sense. Getting everyone invested early prevents problems later. Now, for even more complex systems, especially ones with really diverse user types, it can be hard to visualize how different roles interact within the system. How do you handle that, beyond just talking about it in a workshop?
That's a great question. Sometimes abstract discussion isn't enough.
Yeah, I'm guessing something like role play could offer a more dynamic solution.
You're spot on. In roleplay sessions, individuals literally adopt different user personas or roles like customer service rep, warehouse manager, end customer, and they interact with each other, maybe walking through a specific process or scenario.
Hacking it out.
Basically, yes. They examine system requirements from these multiple perspectives. It's a fantastic brainstorming and empathy-building technique. It helps analysts and developers truly understand how various parts of the system need to function together to support the overall business process.
It surfaces things you might not think of.
Definitely. By physically acting out scenarios, implicit needs, potential communication breakdowns between roles, unexpected edge cases, and even awkward handoffs often surface that might never come up in a static discussion or reading a document. It makes the abstract very concrete and human.
That sounds like a powerful way to build empathy for the user experience, for all the users.
Oh.
Okay, so once you have those high-level functional requirements starting to solidify, it sounds like it's time to translate them into something even more tangible and user-focused. I'm thinking about telling stories, maybe user stories, or creating use cases and scenarios.
Exactly. This is where we shift from abstract concepts like improve efficiency into concrete user experiences. Use cases are a more formal way to describe specific business objectives and situations where a feature is used. They detail the external entities, the actors, like a user or another system, and their interactions as step-by-step tasks needed to achieve a goal. Think of it as a detailed script for a user interacting with the system for a specific purpose.
Like process a return or generate a monthly report.
Precisely. Then scenarios, often called user stories, especially in Agile methodologies, take this a step further by providing a narrative. They put the user in the protagonist's role to describe tasks they need to perform, the information they need to see, and how the system should respond to help them achieve their goal.
The as a I want that format.
That's the classic format, yeah. As a type of user, I want some goal so that some reason benefit. They're incredibly powerful because they're simple, concise, written from the user's perspective. They enable developers to estimate the effort involved and plan work effectively. And crucially, they're designed to change and mature throughout the lifecycle as understanding deepens.
Not set in stone.
Not at all. And many user stories compile into what's called a product backlog, which is essentially the to-do list for the system. This backlog is then managed and prioritized by a product owner who decides what gets built when, based on business value.
Okay, and this is where those UML diagrams we talked about earlier really start to come to life, isn't it?
Yeah,
These user stories and use cases seem like the direct precursors to creating things like use case diagrams,
absolutely.
which visually map out those user interactions and system functions. It connects directly back to KO4 and SO1.
Precisely. The use cases directly inform the use case diagrams. The user stories help clarify the steps within those use cases. And for these user stories to be truly effective, especially in Agile contexts, teams often use the Ein-Invest principle. It's a handy mnemonic to ensure quality.
Okay, break that down.
Sure. Each story should be independent, meaning it can ideally stand alone and be developed without relying heavily on other stories. Negotiable. It's not a rigid contract, but a starting point for conversation and refinement between the business and developers. Valuable. Critically, it must add tangible benefit to users or stakeholders. If it doesn't add value, why are we building it?
Good question.
Right. It needs to be estimable so the development team can roughly calculate its costs in time and effort, which helps with planning. It should be small enough to estimate easily and implement simply within an iteration, avoiding huge, overwhelming tasks. And finally, it must be testable, meaning you can define objective criteria to verify when the story is truly complete and working correctly.
Independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, testable, invest. That's a really clear framework for writing good user stories. But the real insight here, maybe for future leaders listening, is that a good user story isn't just a task description handed down. It's a living blueprint for collaboration, designed to be refined through ongoing dialogue. That feels like a huge shift in mindset from older methods.
Absolutely. It fosters that iterative development and constant feedback loop that's so central to Agile. And while we're talking about feedback, another powerful technique, which is kind of similar to workshops but has a distinct focus, is focus groups.
Right. I often think of focus groups as bringing in the outside perspective, rather than just the internal stakeholders you might have in a requirements workshop.
That's exactly right. Focus groups typically involve external customers or specific user representatives rather than solely internal employees or managers. They provide crucial feedback, maybe on existing products, or they can help guide the direction of new software development by giving insights into broader user needs, market expectations, or competitor comparisons. They're also especially useful for evaluating design prototypes or mock-ups.
So getting that end user reaction early?
Precisely. Even if sometimes, like group interviews, they can be dominated by a few vocal individuals, you still get that fresh, often unvarnished external end-user perspective, which can be incredibly valuable for validating requirements you gathered internally.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay,
We've talked about gathering requirements through conversations, observations, documents, workshops, role-playing user stories, all really valuable. But sometimes you can talk about a user interface all day, you can describe a workflow with meticulous detail, but until you see it, touch it, interact with it, you don't really know if it's right, do you?
You've hit on a core truth in system design. Absolutely.
And here's where prototyping really shines, I imagine.
It really does. Prototyping is an incredibly powerful iterative process. The basic idea is you quickly convert requirements into a working system, even if it's just a preliminary, maybe somewhat superficial version.
Like a mock-up or a wireframe.
It can start there, or it can be a partially functional model. The key is that this version is then continuously revised through close collaboration between the analysts, the designers, and the actual users.
So build, show, get feedback, revise, repeat.
Exactly. It's all about building something tangible, something users can react to help stakeholders visualize requirements. This encourages immediate discussion and refinement. That immediate hands-on feedback loop is incredibly powerful for clarifying fuzzy requirements or complex interactions.
And are there different flavors of prototyping, different approaches?
Indeed. We generally talk about two main types. First, there's evolutionary prototyping. Here, you continuously refine the prototype, adding functionality, improving the UI, fixing issues based on feedback, until it actually becomes the final system.
So it evolves into the real thing.
Right. It's like sculpting. You start with a lump of clay and slowly shape it into the finished product. Then there's throwaway prototyping.
Sounds a bit wasteful.
Not necessarily. With throwaway prototyping, you build a prototype purely for requirements elicitation. The goal is to learn, gather feedback, explore design options, and clarify needs. Once it's served that purpose, you actually discard the prototype code itself. And then you use those learned insights, the validated requirements, to build the actual production quality system from scratch, often using a more robust architecture. This is common when the underlying technology is complex or when the prototype was just focused on exploring the user interface and workflow, not the back-end logic.
Got it. Learning tool versus final product. What are the big benefits?
The benefits are significant across the board. It can often reduce overall development time and cost by catching misunderstandings or design flaws early before tons of code is written.
Cheaper to fix early.
Much cheaper. It dramatically increases user involvement and satisfaction because they feel like they're part of the design process, their voice is heard. And it provides that instant feedback, which is especially valuable when requirements are not well understood initially, when designs are complex, or maybe when there have been communication problems between users and developers in past projects.
Sounds like a powerful tool. So when is prototyping the superhero, the best approach? And when is it maybe more like a sidekick that might cause more trouble than it solves?
Good question. Prototyping is truly at its best, its most heroic, when system requirements are genuinely unclear or ambiguous at the start. When you have a manageable number of users who can actively participate as stakeholders.
Okay.
When the designs themselves are inherently complex, maybe involving new types of interaction. When past communication problems have plagued projects, prototyping forces communication. And of course, when the necessary rapid prototyping tools like Figma or Sketch are readily available and the team knows how to use them.
Makes sense. And the downsides, the risks.
Well, it can be problematic. If formal requirements aren't properly documented alongside the prototype, if you just build the thing without writing down why it's built that way, you can end up with a system that works, but no one fully understands the underlying rules or logic later on.
Right. The why gets lost.
Exactly. Prototypes can also sometimes become too idiosyncratic, tailored too closely to the preferences of the initial small group of users involved, neglecting broader needs or edge cases. Data sharing and integration issues with other existing systems are often glossed over or ignored in the rush to build a visual model quickly.
Ooh, that sounds dangerous.
It can be. And perhaps the biggest risk is bypassing crucial system development lifecycle checks, things like proper testing, security reviews, architectural planning, and the eagerness to produce a working model quickly. This can lead to significant technical debt or instability down the line.
That makes sense. The excitement of seeing something work can sometimes override the discipline of making sure it works right, reliably, and securely. So, how do you avoid those pitfalls? What are the strategies for making prototyping truly successful and not just a quick demo?
Great question. To really nail prototyping, you need a few key things in place. First, clear, specific goals are paramount. What are you trying to achieve with this prototype iteration? Are you validating a conceptual idea, testing a specific feature's usability, or gathering broad user feedback on a workflow? Having that focus streamlines the design, development, and testing efforts.
Know your why?
Exactly. Then leverage those awesome rapid prototyping tools we mentioned: Figma, Sketch, Adobe XD, Axure, there are many. They're game changers for creating interactive wireframes and mockups quickly, without extensive coding, allowing for faster iteration cycles.
Use the right tool for the job.
Right. But critically, you need continuous user feedback. Don't just build it and show it once at the end. Set up regular check-ins, maybe short usability sessions, and allow for iterative refinement based on the real insights you gather from users interacting with it.
Keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Team collaboration is also essential. Ensuring frequent communication and shared understanding among designers, developers, business analysts, and the stakeholders prevents misunderstandings and keeps everyone aligned. And please, don't skip usability testing. Get real users, representative of your target audience, to actually try performing tasks with the prototype. This is where you uncover those hidden pain points and usability issues before you commit to the final design.
Find the problems before they're baked in.
Precisely. And from a project management perspective, meticulous documentation is still important, even with prototypes. Record the decisions made, the feedback received, the modifications implemented. This helps maintain a clear version history, understand the rationale behind changes, especially if you're using tools like Git for version control, even on prototypes.
Document the journey.
Yes. Furthermore, setting clear objectives and scope upfront is vital. Define what success looks like for the prototype, what features are in scope and what's out, and document limitations. This helps prevent that dreaded feature creep where the prototype keeps growing uncontrollably.
Scope management, always key.
Always. Creating a realistic timeline with mapped phases, task dependencies, and buffer time, along with prioritizing updates based on categorized feedback, like high impact versus nice to have, ensures efficient progress and avoids bottlenecks. And finally, a really critical leadership skill here is understanding when to pivot.
knowing when to change direction.
Exactly. Analyzing the user feedback and maybe some basic metrics from the prototype, like task completion rates or user satisfaction, helps you decide whether to adapt the strategy, maybe rethink a core concept, or stay the course. You also need to consider any changes in the market or business goals during the prototyping phase. It's about being flexible but strategic.
That's a fantastic, comprehensive guide to making prototyping work effectively.
Oh.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Sometimes these incremental improvements, even with great prototyping, just aren't enough. The traditional ways of doing things, the existing processes, might be fundamentally flawed, maybe even completely broken.
Right. Sometimes polishing the existing process isn't the answer.
That's when you need something more radical, more transformative. That's when we enter the territory of business process reengineering, or BPR.
That's exactly where BPR comes in, often with a bang. BPR is about the fundamental rethinking and, keyword here, radical redesign of business processes. The goal isn't just small improvements, it's achieving breakthrough. Dramatic improvements in critical performance measures things like cost, quality, service, and speed.
So not just tweaking.
Not at all. It's not just automating existing inefficiencies, which is a common trap. It's tearing down the old ways and rebuilding something fundamentally better. Michael Hammer, one of the early pioneers in this field, famously urged managers to re-engineer work, don't automate, obliterate.
Don't automate, obliterate. Wow. That's a powerful and honestly somewhat intimidating mantra. So it sounds like BPR takes a truly holistic top-down view.
It absolutely has to. It starts with a high-level assessment of the organization's core mission, its strategic goals, and fundamental customer needs. It requires boldly questioning basic assumptions like, does our mission even need to be redefined? Or, why do we do this process this way at all?
Question everything.
Pretty much. And a central tool in BPR is process mapping, but often on a much larger scale than typical requirements gathering. You create these large-scale maps that meticulously capture every single activity, every handoff between departments or people, and every information flow within a major end-to-end process.
So you have a whole picture.
Exactly. And this is incredibly revealing. It often uncovers hidden dependencies, those unofficial shadow databases, the complex spreadsheets that everyone relies on but aren't official systems, and frustrating rework loops that were previously invisible or just accepted as the way things are.
And for our students listening, visualizing those redesigned processes is absolutely key. This kind of deep process mapping feeds directly into your ability to implement activity diagrams from real business cases, which is a fundamental skill, your SO2. It's about modeling how work gets done, or should get done.
Indeed. And here's where information technology, IT, plays a crucial role in BPR. It's not just about making the old process more efficient. IT is often a major enabler for entirely new organizational forms, new ways of collaborating, and completely redesigned processes that weren't possible before.
But IT enables the obliterate part.
It often does, and frequently, disruptive technologies, which we'll dig into next, are the key technological enablers that unlock these radical changes possible through BPR.
Okay, but BPR sounds like a massive undertaking. What makes it succeed or fail?
It is a massive undertaking, and the failure rate can be high if not managed carefully. Several factors are absolutely critical for success. First, you need organization-wide commitment. This isn't a skunkworks project. It requires visible, strong sponsorship from top management, but also genuine buy-in from the bottom up, from the people whose jobs will change. You need a dedicated BPR team and an adequate budget.
Top-down support, bottom-up engagement.
Exactly. Second, the team composition matters immensely. You need competent, motivated, credible, and importantly, creative members drawn from diverse work groups, people from management, process owners, tech experts, finance, maybe even key customers or suppliers. And sometimes bringing in outsiders can inject fresh perspectives. It's often best to keep these core teams relatively small and agile, typically under 10 players, to facilitate decision-making.
Get the right people in the room.
Third, a thorough business needs analysis is paramount. You have to deeply assess the current processes and their shortcomings before you even think about jumping to technological solutions. You need to build consensus on what the ideal future state process should look like. Define specific, measurable goals and objectives for the BPR effort, and ensure everything tightly aligns with the overall strategic direction of the business.
Strategy first, tech second.
Always. Fourth, adequate IT infrastructure is non-negotiable if technology is an enabler. This means strategically aligning IT investments with the BPR goals, building or leveraging an effective infrastructure, and using modern software tools effectively. Think of classic examples like Walmart completely re-engineering its supply chain using IT for inventory management and logistics, or Ford dramatically reducing its procurement department headcount by 75% by implementing IT systems that streamlined the procure-to-pay process.
Those are impressive, famous examples.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of change, which often brings resistance, right?
That leads directly to our fifth critical success factor: effective change management. This is absolutely vital and often the hardest part. You have to proactively address the human and social aspects of BPR, facilitate the necessary cultural adjustments, deal with the inevitable resistance to change, which is, frankly, a major reason why many BPR initiatives fail.
People issues.
Always the hardest issues. You must effectively communicate the necessity for the change, the why behind it, and focus on supporting the people impacted, not just implementing the technology. And finally, number 6 is recognizing the need for ongoing continuous improvement. BPR isn't a one-and-done project. It's often the start of a successive process of refinement. The automation infrastructure you build must support performance measurements and feedback loops to ensure the changes stick, deliver the expected benefits, and continue to evolve over time.
Wow. That's a lot to manage. It sounds like a fantastic concept when it works, but also fraught with challenges. I feel like I've heard that BPR also got a bit of a bad reputation in its early days.
It did, unfortunately. Despite its potential for dramatic positive transformation, BPR gained a reputation in the 90s, particularly for being synonymous with downsizing, layoffs, and ruthless cost-cutting.
Ah, okay. The human cost.
Exactly. Many early initiatives focused almost strictly on efficiency gains and technology implementation while disregarding or poorly managing the human element. Some of its most vocal proponents, like Thomas Davenport and even Michael Hammer himself, later admitted in writings that they had initially underappreciated the critical importance of the human dimension of change. It was a powerful and sometimes painful lesson for the management world about managing the people side of radical transformation.
A cautionary tale, let's make this more concrete. Can you talk about a compelling real-world example?
Yeah.
Maybe that ETEC Petroleum Limited APL case from the petroleum industry you mentioned. They face significant supply chain challenges, right?
Yes, the APL case is a great illustration. They were grappling with inefficiencies and vulnerabilities in their traditional fuel distribution supply chain and decided to embark on a BPR initiative for a radical overhaul, heavily enabled by technology.
What was their goal?
Their goal was a truly radical redesign centered on 3 key technological implementations. They planned to install a sophisticated vehicle tracking system for their entire fuel transport fleet. They aimed to implement auto tank gauging ATG systems at their retail gas stations. And they wanted to establish a centralized data acquisition center to monitor everything in real time.
Okay, so tracking trucks and knowing fuel levels automatically. What were the expected outcomes?
They were quite ambitious. They projected a significant increase in sales volumes by approximately 20%, aiming to go from 1.8 million to 2.2 million metric tons annually. They also anticipated a reduction in human resources needed for manual monitoring and reconciliation by about 30%, leading to significant operational savings.
Big.
Very big. They aimed to ensure just-in-time product availability at retail outlets, which would increase customer trust and loyalty. Beyond that, they targeted better overall resource utilization, more advanced sourcing strategies, and improved distribution planning based on real-time data.
But wasn't there a bigger issue they were trying to solve? Something about theft?
Absolutely. Critically, this BPR initiative was designed to tackle a major industry problem: controlling product adulteration and theft. This is huge in fuel distribution. The real-time data from the ATG systems at the gas stations would restrict illegal purchasing or selling by retailers because the central system would know exactly how much fuel was in each tank at any given time.
Ah, transparency.
Exactly. And the vehicle tracking would monitor the fleet's movement precisely, preventing unauthorized diversions of trucks from mixing lower quality products into the fuel or for outright theft and black market sales. This directly ensured product quality met standards and helped APL comply with regulatory authorities like OGRA, Oil and Gas Regulatory Authority.
So quality control and loss prevention baked into the new process.
Right. They anticipated further cost reductions in logistics due to better routing and scheduling, and a significant increase in market share as a result of improved reliability and quality. The entire supply chain cycle would be simplified. Automatic data acquisition, replacing manual alerts from retailers needing fuel, online data allowing proactive replenishment planning, and the tracking providing real-time shipment information and quality assurance throughout the journey.
That APL case really vividly demonstrates how BPR, when thoughtfully implemented and enabled by the right technology, can fundamentally transform operations and achieve significant quantifiable business benefits. This ties directly back to applying those economic models, KO1, like calculating ROI on the tech investment versus savings, and increased revenue and organizational models, KO2, understanding how these process changes impact structure, roles, and workflows. It's a clear example of how these concepts play out on a grand scale.
It really is.
And you mentioned that this whole concept of BPR often goes hand in hand with something called disruptive technologies. These are the real game changers, you said.
Indeed, they often provide the catalyst or the enabling power for BPR to happen. A disruptive technology isn't just a new gadget or a slightly faster processor. It's an innovation that fundamentally creates a new market and value network altogether.
Okay.
Or it enters at the bottom of an existing market, often with a simpler, cheaper, maybe initially inferior product that eventually improves and displaces the established market leaders. The key is that it enables breaking long-held business rules or assumptions that might otherwise inhibit radical change.
So not just a better mousetrap, but maybe like a cat. A completely new way to deal with a mice problem.
Exactly. Think about the classic examples. The mass-produced Ford Model T. It wasn't just a better horse-drawn carriage, it created the mass market for personal mobility and completely disrupted the carriage industry. Interestingly, earlier luxury cars weren't disruptive in the same way because they targeted the existing high-end market and didn't fundamentally change the accessibility of transport.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
Mini-computers disrupted mainframes by offering a cheaper, more accessible alternative for many tasks. Then personal computers came along and combined functions, disrupting both mini-computers and specialized workstations. Digital photography fundamentally disrupted chemical photography, and ironically, Kodak actually invented the first digital camera, but failed to embrace the disruption to its core film business, with devastating consequences.
Yeah, the Kodak story is famous.
It is. Streaming video radically disrupted video rentals, think Blockbuster versus Netflix. Even social media has significantly disrupted traditional news dissemination, especially in areas like sports reporting, creating new, immediate, and often unfiltered access to information and athletes.
Right, bypassing traditional media outlets.
Exactly, and today, many see the electric car as a potentially disruptive technology to the internal combustion engine car, primarily because it challenges the entire existing support network of gas stations, oil companies, and specialized mechanics.
It changes the whole ecosystem.
Precisely. And Clayton Christensen's theory on disruptive innovation beautifully explains why this often happens. He argued that disruptive innovations are typically pioneered by outsiders or startups because established firms often struggle to pursue them initially.
Why is that? Why do big companies miss these shifts?
Well, Christensen's idea is that these innovations usually aren't profitable enough at first, and they often target smaller, less attractive market segments. Developing them often diverts resources away from sustaining innovations, those incremental improvements needed to compete against current rivals in their main markets. Essentially, the established firm's existing value networks, their current customers, their sales channels, their metrics simply don't value the disruptive innovation enough early on, precisely because it looks like a lesser product for a smaller, unappealing market segment. They're focused on satisfying their current best customers.
That's fascinating. Focused on today, miss tomorrow. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and practical for our listeners, especially future strategists and managers. Understanding disruption is one thing, but how do you actually assess the potential impact of these emerging, potentially disruptive technologies strategically? Is there a way to analyze them?
Yes, there is. Predicting the impact of disruption is incredibly difficult, but frameworks can help structure the thinking. One powerful framework proposes assessing potential disruptive technologies across 5 crucial dimensions.
5 dimensions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first?
The first is the strategic dimension. This looks at the broad external factors, the macro environment. Think about political variables. Will this innovation be supported by government policy, maybe through sustainable innovation initiatives, or will it face regulatory hurdles? Does it give a sustainable marketplace edge?
Okay, political context.
Then, economic factors. What's the country's or region's level of business development? What's the potential market share or quota? How much R&D investment is flowing into this area? What's the likely adoption rate? Consider the early history of steam power. British economic power was deeply tied to its industrial use, but the French military adopted it earlier for specific naval applications, showing different economic drivers.
Interesting historical example. What else another strategic?
Cultural aspects are huge. What's the societal acceptability or potential resistance due to ethical considerations, religious beliefs, or ingrained habits? AI today sparks enormous ethical debates, right? Compare that to early technologies like the railroad, which was embraced with relatively little societal resistance despite its massive impact. And finally, legal elements. The effectiveness and adaptability of regulations, intellectual property laws, privacy concerns, liability issues. It's about anticipating not just if the tech works, but if the broader society will accept it and if the legal and political environment allows it to flourish.
Wow. So it's about anticipating the whole ecosystem around the tech, not just the tech itself. That's a crucial set of variables often overlooked by engineers. What's the second dimension?
The second is the operational dimension. This focuses much more internally on the day-to-day execution and immediate impact if the technology were adopted. Variables here include performance. How much tangible efficiency or effectiveness does it add? What's the measurable impact on production output, product quality, customer satisfaction levels, or maybe operational response times?
Hard numbers.
Yes. We also look at congruence. How well does the technology integrate with its intended use case in a timely, relevant situation? For instance, merely having a corporate social media account isn't enough. Using it effectively and congruently for brand awareness or customer service is the key. Is the tech a good fit for the process?
Right place, right time, right function.
Exactly. And finally, opportunity. Is the timing right for adoption? Can we perhaps learn from the failures or successes of early adopters? Is this a technology we need to adopt defensively because our competition just did? Think of how cloud computing rapidly became almost table stakes, enabling scalability and new business models for so many companies.
Okay, strategic, operational. You mentioned competitive maneuvers earlier. Is there a specific dimension for that?
Absolutely, that's the third one, the tactical dimension. This deals directly with competitive strategy and maneuvering in the marketplace. It includes the element of secrecy. How much market surprise can we achieve with this technology or its application? How quickly can competitors likely develop countermeasures or copy it? Apple's historically highly secretive product launches are a prime example of leveraging this tactical dimension.
The element of surprise.
And then there are the necessary changes in our own tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTP. How does adopting this technology force us or allow us to shift our team organization, enhance training programs, boost specific R&D efforts, or change our go-to-market strategy to stay ahead or exploit the advantage?
How we fight, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, strategic, operational, tactical. What about the tech itself? We have to evaluate that directly, right?
Of course, that's the fourth dimension, the technical dimension. This dives into evaluating the technology itself on its own merits. Variables include its objective performance metrics, its key performance indicators, KPIs, compared to alternatives, the results from rigorous testing, and feedback from early trials or simulations.
How good is it, really?
Exactly. We also consider its maturity. This is often measured using frameworks like the Technology Readiness Levels, TRLs, typically ranging from 1 basic principles observed up to 9 actual system proven in an operational environment. For instance, blockchain, when it first emerged, might have been at TRL 1 or 2, needing extensive research and requirements definition. In contrast, a highly developed system like a U.S. Navy laser weapon undergoing field tests might be at TRL 6 or 7, already prototyped and demonstrated in a relevant environment. Understanding the TRL helps gauge risk and development time.
Knowing how baked it is.
Right. And finally, within the technical dimension, we look at interconnectedness. What's the potential for this technology to be combined with or enable other technologies, perhaps integrating previously uncorrelated capabilities? Think of how the Predator drone became truly transformational only after GPS navigation and sophisticated sensors were integrated. Or how AI's widespread practical use really took off only with parallel advancements in powerful microprocessors and large data sets. It's about the synergy potential.
Fascinating. Okay, that's 4 dimensions. What's the fifth and final one?
The fifth is the organizational dimension. This brings it back inside the company, addressing internal capabilities, culture, and resources needed to actually adopt and leverage the technology. This includes assessing internal support. Is there strong sponsorship from senior leaders? Are small, dedicated, perhaps somewhat sheltered teams allowed to participate and experiment, like the famous stories of how the Barbie doll initially faced internal resistance at Mattel, or how Nespresso was nurtured within Nestlé? That internal champion is often crucial.
The political will inside.
Yes. We also need to consider the pacing gap. The time it takes for internal policies, structures, and sometimes even laws and regulations to catch up with the rapid pace of technological development. This gap can either stifle innovation or, if managed well, create opportunity. And finally, cost. Not just the obvious size and type of financial investment required, but also the cost in terms of human capital. Do we have the right talent, or can we acquire or train it? What are the infrastructure requirements? And what's the viability of actually replicating or scaling this technology across the entire organization if it proves successful? For example, biotechnology R&D often needs significantly more upfront investment in specialized labs and PhD-level personnel compared to software development, which might scale with less physical infrastructure but requires different kinds of engineering talent.
Understanding this comprehensive five-dimensional framework, strategic, operational, tactical, technical, and organizational, is incredibly valuable. It's key to applying project management methodologies, KO5, effectively when dealing with innovation. And it especially enhances your ability, thinking about WO1 again, to choose appropriate analysis tools and clearly communicate the complex findings and recommendations of such an assessment to leadership or stakeholders. It's about being able to break down and articulate the multifaceted potential impact of these technological shifts to anyone in the business in a structured way.
Couldn't agree more. It provides a necessary structure for a very complex evaluation.
But, in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, that kind of deep, potentially slow analysis, while valuable, needs to be balanced with speed. Rigidity can kill a project. Sticking to a long, drawn-out traditional plan can sometimes leave you behind before you even launch.
That's the reality.
And that's precisely why Agile methodologies have gained so much traction, particularly in software development, but the principles apply more broadly too.
Absolutely. Agile represents a fundamental shift, radically overhauling traditional requirements gathering approaches. Unlike the more linear sequential waterfall model, where the ideal is to gather all requirements meticulously upfront before any design or coding begins.
Get it all perfect first.
Right, which often proves impossible in reality. Agile thrives on an iterative, incremental, continuous, and intensely customer-focused approach. It explicitly trades a degree of upfront certainty and predictability for immense adaptability and responsiveness throughout the project lifecycle.
Flexibility over upfront perfection.
Exactly. The Agile Manifesto, which really kicked things off formally back in 2001, distills this paradigm into four core values. 1, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. 2, working software over comprehensive documentation. 3, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. 4, responding to change over following a plan.
Those values had a huge impact.
They really have. And these values mean that Agile requirements gathering isn't a single phase at the beginning. It's an ongoing dialogue, a continuous process of discovery and refinement that supports the evolution of a product that truly addresses emerging user needs and dynamic business goals.
So it's less about crafting a perfect, detailed plan from the start, and much more about continuous adjustment and learning, always keeping the user and the working product at the center.
That's the essence of it. And at the heart of making Agile work, especially for requirements, are those user stories we discussed earlier. They become the primary artifact for representing requirements. Remember the format. As a type of user, I want some goal so that some reason benefit.
Simple, user-centric.
Exactly. They're crucial because they're small enough to estimate effort, they help plan iterations or sprints, and they are explicitly designed to continuously change, evolve, and mature throughout the software development lifecycle as the team learns more. They aren't static specs.
And they all go into that backlog.
Right. These stories are compiled into the product backlog, which acts as the prioritized to-do list for the entire project. This backlog is actively managed by a product owner, a role specifically responsible for representing the business and user interests. The product owner works closely with the development team to prioritize these stories based on factors like business value, urgency, dependencies, and estimated effort.
So the business is constantly involved in deciding what's next.
Constantly. Higher priority items in the backlog often require more detail and refinement just before they're worked on, while lower priority ones might remain fairly high level, perhaps to be fleshed out later, or even removed entirely if they no longer align with evolving needs or goals.
Dynamic prioritization.
Agile teams also have a keen focus on executable requirements. This often involves practices like test-first design or behavior-driven development, BDD. The idea is that you actually model the requirements, perhaps write automated tests that express those requirements first, then write just enough code to make those tests pass, and then refine or refactor the code.
Test define the requirements.
In a way, yes, or at least they verify them very concretely. This approach helps identify cross-requirement dependencies, ambiguities, and potential problems very early in the process through this test-driven development cycle. It's about focusing intensely on what the system needs to do and how it should behave directly in the code or executable specifications, validated continuously by automated tests.
That's a clever way to ensure clarity and build quality in from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the INVEST principle for user stories earlier. Does that still apply just as strongly in Agile?
Oh, absolutely. The INVEST principle, independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable, is absolutely vital for ensuring your user stories are effective and truly support the Agile flow. And when writing these stories and breaking down work, it's helpful to think in terms of delivering vertical slices of functionality rather than horizontal layers.
Vertical slices versus horizontal layers. Explain that.
Sure, a horizontal layer might be like, build the entire database structure first, then build the entire middle tier, then build the entire UI. This means you don't have any working end-to-end functionality for a long time. A vertical slice, however, delivers a small piece of functionality that goes through all the layers, UI, middleware, backend, database needed to make that specific feature work, even if it's simple initially.
So you get working software faster.
Exactly. These smaller end-to-end requirements or feature sets, often represented by well-formed invest user stories, are much easier to estimate, prioritize, build, test, and get feedback on within a short iteration. This avoids those large, complex horizontal requirements that create massive dependencies, violate the invest principle, and bog down progress, preventing that rapid delivery of value.
Got it. Break it down into manageable, valuable chunks that can be developed and delivered independently, almost like building blocks of user value.
Precisely put. And prototyping, which we discussed in detail earlier, also finds a very natural and comfortable home within Agile methodologies. It directly supports the Agile principles of iteration, feedback, and collaboration.
How so?
Well, Agile naturally facilitates experimentation and risk mitigation through quick, iterative tests and feedback loops. Prototyping is a perfect way to test ideas quickly, encourage immediate stakeholder discussion about the look, feel, and flow, and allow for rapid refinement of the software design based on that feedback. Often, the resulting code from an Agile prototype, especially if built with good practices, can even be directly reused or refactored into the final production build, further accelerating development. It's not always throwaway in Agile.
Integrated prototyping.
Yeah.
Okay, are there specific Agile methods that focus heavily on requirements gathering?
Yes, several Agile frameworks have specific practices. For example, Agile Usage-Centered Design is a methodology that specifically gathers a group of key stakeholders and user representatives together with a facilitator. They focus intensely on modeling user roles, defining the key goals those users need to achieve, and mapping out the specific task required to achieve those goals, ensuring the design remains relentlessly user-centric.
It sounds focused. What else?
Another classic example comes from Extreme Programming, XP, one of the earliest Agile methodologies. It uses a practice called the planning game. This involves two distinct types of players interacting frequently. The business players, who know the processes, represent the users, and define value, and the development players, who design, build, and test the system. They collaboratively use story cards, physical cards, detailing procedures or features, which are essentially our user stories.
A game. How does that play out? It sounds
Yeah.
quite dynamic and collaborative.
It's designed to be very dynamic. It typically has three distinct phases within each planning cycle. First is exploration. The business side writes story cards describing the features or functionality they want, and the development side discusses these cards, asks clarifying questions, and provides rough estimates of the effort involved for each.
Okay, initial understanding and sizing.
Right. Second is commitment. The business side then sorts these estimated stories by business necessity or value, what must be in the next release versus what's less critical. Simultaneously, the development side might sort them by technical risk or dependency. Then, collaboratively, the business side chooses a specific set of stories they commit to funding or prioritizing for the very next release or iteration, balancing their needs with the development team's capacity and risk assessment.
Making trade-offs together.
Exactly. And finally, the third phase is steering. As the iteration progresses and stories get completed, the business reviews the actual working software frequently, provides feedback, and both sides collaboratively adjust the plan for future iterations based on what's been learned, changing priorities, or new insights. It's a continuous feedback and adjustment loop.
That sounds incredibly collaborative. Both Agile usage-centered design and the planning game really emphasize that constant user participation, the reliance on small, discrete cards or stories for requirements, and a laser focus on user tasks and value. These elements seem essential for navigating the complexities and uncertainties of modern system development. And for students, understanding these approaches directly supports your grasp of applying project management methodologies, KO5, in a real-world, dynamic, and often unpredictable setting. It's about managing flow and adaptation, not just rigid plans.
Well summarized. We've certainly covered a lot of ground today. We've journeyed through the really intricate world of determining system requirements. We started with those foundational conversations of traditional interviews and the sometimes surprising insights you get from document analysis. Then moved to the potentially radical transformations possible with business process reengineering and understanding the strategic power and threat of disruptive technologies.
Yeah, the big picture shifts.
Right.
Yeah.
And all while embracing the adaptability and user focus of Agile methodologies like user stories in the planning game. I think the key takeaway is that understanding what users truly need isn't just a technical task buried early in a project plan. It's a fundamental, ongoing strategic imperative that can genuinely make or break a business in today's world. For any aspiring leader in business or technology, mastering these skills, this art and science, is simply non-negotiable.
I couldn't agree more. And remember that initial question we started with about why some digital experiences feel seamless, almost magical, while others are just a frustrating mystery. The answer, as we've seen, really lies in the rigor, the empathy, the foresight, and the collaboration applied during this crucial requirements phase. For you, especially as students tackling your BCIS 3389 course here and becoming future leaders from Tarleton State University's Dr. Sampak College of Business, mastering these techniques means you're not just learning to build systems. You're learning how to build the future of business, one well-understood requirement at a time. You're learning how to solve real problems for real people.
Beautifully put. And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive today. Your engagement, your questions, your interest, it really fuels our mission to make these sometimes complex topics accessible and hopefully exciting.
Yeah, we appreciate you tuning in.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive if you found it valuable. And definitely check the description below for even more resources we've put together to help you excel in your studies and launch your careers.
Great stuff in there. Okay, so as you go about your day, as you interact with the technology around you, consider this final thought. What long-held business rule, maybe in an industry you know or are interested in, do you think is ripe for disruption right now? And connecting back to today's topic, what specific system requirement would you pinpoint as the first critical step needed to initiate that change? Something to ponder.
Good question to chew on.
Behind every tap, swipe, and click is a system that someone, maybe someone like you one day, designed. Until next time, keep building the future one process at a time.